Welcome, team players, to our final episode covering the first round of the NFL draft. We've already gone through picks 1 to 24. You can watch them both in the playlist and just clicking back through yesterday's episodes. Today is going to be picks 25 to 31. We're bringing it home with the final 7. It starts with the Bills taking Dalton Kincaid, tight end out of the Utah Utes. The Cowboys go to Big Blue with Mazi Smith. The Jags take Anton Harrison as a result of their trade, Anton Harrison being the tackle out of Oklahoma. Myles Murphy, edge rusher from Clemson, goes to the Cincinnati Bengals. Bob, they might be drafting good now. It's kind of getting concerning. The Saints draft Bryan, D tackle from Clemson. 2 Clemson rushers back-to-back, both immensely talented. The Eagles taking just another defensive player from Georgia in Nolan Smith. And then the Chiefs end up the day taking Felix, because there's no way I'm saying his name right, from Kansas State. So, Bob, I want to just go through this here. Lots of Clemson love, lots of edge rushers. Any one of those group that you think, wow, that one good?
Well, I want to start first with the Jaguars.
Okay.
I don't hate the pick, and I just want to start first to give a shout out to one of our guests, Brandon. He has the tag on Twitter, InterJag. He has come around a little bit on that pick on Anton Harrison. Now, it's a good pick. The Jaguars know who they are. They know what they want to do. And they went out and got a guy who does, maybe is rotational at first, but it's always good to have depth at offensive line.
Tackle, yeah.
And especially when you look at what the Jaguars want to do with this team, they've got a quarterback who, really can bomb it if they want to. They've got a quarterback that wants to run it too sometimes, but chooses not to. They've got Travis Etienne. So all signs point to that was a very good selection for them. Now, they still need to fill a lot of voids on defense. And they need more corners. They need to get guys that are going to be able to spot in and help people on the defense, because their defense did not look good at times earlier in the year and towards the middle of the year. I think they're in a really good position because as a skill position players, they've got everything they need. They've got Calvin Ridley coming back. They're set up to be in a really good place next year. So adding an offensive lineman, particularly that late at that point in time, is definitely not a bad idea at all. Now, when we get down into, the brass tacks of things, when we see all of these players and we go, okay, well, I'm not really sure who's going to smack here, who's going to be doing well. But I would like to just mention Kansas City's selection for a moment. I'd like to mention it because Kansas City, it doesn't feel like they ever need anything. Never feels like they need anything. But
winning 2 of the last 4 Super Bowls.
But they do, and this is one of the things
they do, yeah.
This is one of the things they need. Now, I'm not sure if it's the best selection, because the guy that they chose, Uzomah, is undersized. Like you said, you can gain size. And, they've got some aging guys on the defense there in Kansas City. And he's unlike what they did in the Philadelphia Eagles camp and just drafting Georgia.
It's a good stretch.
The Eagles, what they've done, and I'm going to get back to the Chiefs in a minute. What the Eagles did is they already have, and it's similar to it's a luxury pick. It's similar to what the Detroit Lions did with running backs and what, Atlanta did with running backs is you went out and got arguably 2 of the best defensive linemen in the draft. You already have the best defensive line in football. Well, guess what? If you take the if you take the 2 next best defensive linemen that are up and coming and you let them learn from the best offensive or defensive linemen coming, well, then guess what? You just made a culture around your defensive linemen being successful. And to do that is extremely impressive. And I think that by doing that, they've set themselves up for the future really, really well. And I think here with this pick from Kansas City, it's more of one of those, you don't really know what's going to happen. This could be a guy that's going to be in the league for 10, 20 years. This could be a guy that fizzles out in 2 years. These picks can do that. And I feel that at least going defense for the Chiefs in this scenario, it's a position that they needed to look at. They needed to look at defensive line. They need to look at other positions, linebackers, cornerbacks, safeties. They got kind of exposed a little bit against Philadelphia in that Super Bowl a lot at times. And so they ended up winning that, but at the same point in time, they could have easily lost that game. And so I think looking at defensive line in a division where, the quarterbacks are, suspect other than Justin Herbert, it's a good decision to make.
Yeah. When I look at this group, I see a lot of players that I'm pretty confident are going to be successful in this league. Aside from landing positions, Myles Murphy and Bresee, the two from Clemson, are the real deal. The thing with Bresee is he probably should have gone ahead of Mazi Smith if there was no health risk. His health risk could have taken him anywhere from being immediately taken after Jalen Carter to third round. I mean, there's just a risk with him that no one will know. But talent-wise, when he's on, he's worthy of being a top 15 pick. So for the Saints to snag him at 29 is a great pick. The Bengals need a pass rush. I mean, and when we look at Myles Murphy there, the Bengals have an offense very similar to the Chargers. Teams set up very similarly. They let up leads last year, and how do you prevent that? You sack the quarterback. Mm-hmm. Cincinnati is looking like they're actually getting their life together. Mm-hmm. And for the majority of time, they haven't had that. So the pick that I think is going to be the most beneficial of this cluster, 25 to 31, though, is Dalton Kincaid. Because when we have talked about the Buffalo Bills breaking down their fantasy teams for basically the Josh Allen era, they never have a reliable tight end. Knox will give you 2 touchdowns in a week and then disappear for a month. And in terms of building the team around him, it doesn't really happen. So I like that they're aggressively attacking the position at a spot where they know we couldn't have put another receiver there because you're not getting him on the field over Gabe Davis or Diggs. We can get a skill player on the field now at tight end, taking the first tight end off the board. And unless they were going defense, which, again, the Bills' defense doesn't have its main glaring holes, tight end, normally seen as a luxury position in the first round, probably was the Bills' biggest need. And the fantasy impact, I think that this is one worth looking at, strongly when you're entering your fantasy drafts here in a couple of months.
So I want to go to first the Saints pick and then to the Buffalo pick. The Saints are old. We've said it once. We've still said it 1,000 times. That defense is old. And to get a guy like Bresee to come in and just knock the lights out of people is exactly what the Saints need. Mm-hmm. The Saints need a rush. They don't need, a geriatric front. They need somebody that's going to go in there and pound it in. Now, where the problem is, like you said, is health. There has been health issues in the past. So we have to ask ourselves, did the Saints do the best they can? Absolutely. That was the pick. That was an incredibly smart pick to take at that moment because that's exactly the position that they needed to get better in. They do have a lot to work on, but that is one of the needs that they have. And I think when we look at them as an overall whole of a team, as they look toward the future, this is a great building block. And I think that whatever picks they take next, they should continue to go defensive line because defensive line is some of the most important people on the field. If you can get a pass rush in, it doesn't matter how bad those guys in the backfield are. If you can pressure that quarterback to make a bad decision, bad players are eventually going to look decent.
That's right.
In a way. But back to Buffalo. Going into the draft, Buffalo is the team that I didn't really see a definitive, overwhelming need for.
Mhm.
You look at Buffalo and you say, okay, well, they have Dawson Knox, they have Diggs, they have Gabe Davis, they have Josh Allen. Their running backs.
Yeah, but you weren't going to draft the third running back in the first round.
You weren't going to draft the third running back. Now, if I were the Bills, and I felt like my team was complete, what I would have done was I would have been talking to try to trade up to that first round. Because looking at what the Bills should be in the years to come, the Bills should be a playoff contender, which means your first round pick in the future is 20 or below. Mm-hmm. You're looking, or 20 or above, however you want to frame it.
Yeah, I got you.
So the draft capital that you're giving up is not tremendously high. Now, you pair that with second or third or maybe 2 firsts up in the coming years to get up into the top 10 to draft Bijan Robinson. That's the guy I think the Bills should have taken above everybody else in the whole league. I think that the Bills,
but they weren't going to trade up to 8.
I get it. But what I'm communicating more so is that I think that they should have at least shopped around, because they're the team, and we've talked that their defense does have some holes that they could get better at. But you come to Buffalo in the winter, what do you want? A run game. What doesn't Buffalo have? A run game. And they didn't go out and get a run game. They got a second tight end to, and the issue isn't with Dawson Knox. It's not that Dawson Knox can't perform. It's that Josh Allen will decide to just keep throwing the ball to Diggs or keep throwing the ball to Davis, and Dawson Knox becomes not useful.
Diggs is amazing. Give him the ball. What kind of argument do you have there?
I think in a way, when we talk about tight ends, you absolutely want a tight end that can block and be an inline blocker. You also want a guy who can stretch the field. This guy can do that. Mm-hmm. Of course he can, but you haven't made your run game exponentially better because the talent that you're still sitting with. And I know they have some guys that they've sat around with for a long time, but I'm just not feeling it. I'm really not feeling the pick. I'm really not feeling the player, and I feel like it didn't seem like a necessity to. And this is the same thing where I'm saying, like maybe they weren't able to move that pick and they wanted to actually move down, because at tight end seems like you could get.
No, they moved up to it. They traded with Jacksonville to get up.
That's what I'm saying. It doesn't make any. It doesn't make any sense to me. If you're going to move up, why wasn't Bijan Robinson your guy you're moving up for? Why wasn't Jahmyr Gibbs the guy you were moving up for? Because you need help, and you need health, and you need help, and you need a lot of it. And you can't let Josh Allen continue to run the ball, because they're going to continue to obliterate him, and the Jets defense is getting better. The Patriots defense is getting better, and you're not improving that. And I get how a benefit of a tight end can be to help you in doing that, but I just don't see as this being the guy that's going to set the Bills to now go to the Super Bowl. The Bills needed a player that was going to go to the Super Bowl, and they didn't get one.